This is going to be a part two to my white liberals, nice guys, and the Negro. In that previous video, I started talking about what makes the white liberal a nice guy, and how nice guys aren't really nice. And I'm pondering making this into a series because I have a lot of material I want to cover. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the pathology of the white liberal as it pertains to his social programs. Now, a lot of Negroes, they think that the white liberal social programs are about elevating the Negro and bringing him up into a middle class. But there's a lot of passive aggressiveness and a lot of nastiness behind that. Because when you look at the white liberal and his social programs, he is basically insulting the Negro by saying, you know what, you need these social programs in order to be a part of the middle class. Now, the Negro, for the most part, thinks that the white liberal is giving him a helping hand. But he's not giving him a helping hand. He's basically giving him a slap in the face by saying, you know what, you need these social programs in order to get that helping hand into the middle class. He's basically telling the Negro that he's too stupid to go out and do things on his own. He's not smart enough to do things on his own. And without the help of this white liberal, he can't be a part of the middle class. Now, because the Negro, for the most part, does not like hard work, he does not like to fail, he does not like to learn hard lessons, he thinks that he takes the hand from the white liberal, not knowing it's not a hand up, but, you know, it's a hand that's going to keep him dependent on him. And this is something that the Negro just doesn't understand. He looks at the conservative who tells him, you have to do for yourself and you have to do things for yourself. You have to learn. And yes, it's a painful process that you learn from your failures, you learn from your mistakes, but eventually you grow to become a better person. But the liberal prevents that growth from happening by making excuses for the Negro and enabling the Negro, allowing him to remain in a dysfunctional state of mental and emotional arrested development. And that's what those social programs do. They impede the growth of the Negro. At the end, make some money for the white liberal at his expense. Because instead of the Negro learning what he needs to do in order to build a community, all he learns instead is continuing dependence on others. And that's part of what, nice guys like to do. Because what happens with nice guys is they like to call themselves being people who fix and caretake people who they feel are troubled, because that's a big component of nice guy syndrome. Nice guys, when they have relationships, especially with women, they'll try to find the most troubled, most dysfunctional female, and they'll try to make it a fixer-upper project where they, help this woman. They buy her clothes, they try to help her get into school, and they try to do things to help the woman. But oftentimes, for all their help, all they do is impede this person's personal growth and wind up enabling them to continue to remain dysfunctional, because instead of the person doing for themselves, what happens is they're doing things for them. And usually the nice guy often winds up being disappointed because after he's done all this stuff for people, the person does not usually turn out to be the way they want them to be. And the person usually never grows or changes because they never had any incentive to do so. And if we look at the white liberals' social programs, we see that whole fixing and caretaking paradigm happening all over again. The whole nice guy fix and caretake. See, the white liberal sees the Negro as less than. He sees them as a poor, pathetic individual who needs the white liberal's hand in order to come up to some semblance of where he is. Not an equal, but a semblance of where he is. And because he's coming from that perspective, he sabotages the growth of the Negro overall with his social programs. And while the Negro is in the social programs, what he does is he gets the Negro to go into his social programs. But what really impedes the Negro's growth is, you know, the white liberal has all the, because he's insecure, he puts all these strings on his social programs, which impede the person's growth, along with the enabling, which is all the good government benefits. And while he's fixing and caretaking this individual, they are not learning what they need, you know, in order to do for self. Instead, they're learning continued dependence on the white liberal on the white liberal social programs and continued, you know, dependence on the white liberal. And instead of them, learning from falling down and then getting back up and learning to try to do better for themselves, instead, all they're learning is, as long as I have a program, I don't really have to try. So he sucks the incentive out of the Negro. The Negro has no incentive to do better because Negro knows that there's going to be a white liberal there to fix him, to caretake him, and to meet his needs. So he never learns how to meet his needs for himself. Now, the other component of it is that the white liberal is not doing this to help improve the Negro. He's doing this so he can make money off the Negro. And that's what the passive aggressive component is. Because nice guys, again, are passive aggressive. Now, the passive part is he's offering you a social program, but the aggressive part is that he does not want to compete with the Afro American Negro. So if the Negro is, placated, he's being caretaken, his needs are being, somewhat met, and he's somewhat, being fed, clothed, housed, he has no incentive to go out and get his own and build his own because somebody is doing it for him. And the white liberal has no incentive to go out and do for self. He's doing things for people, but he's doing them, in a whole give to get thing. He's giving to the Negro in order to get money from the government. There's all these block grants, all these government grants, all this grant money. He's getting billions of dollars from giving for himself at the expense of the Negro's own personal growth and his mental health, because what he's doing, he says he's trying to improve the quality of life for the Negro, but all he's doing is sucking the life out of the Negro by not allowing him to grow on his own and not allowing him to be the person he wants to be. Just like your Captain Saveums, the Captain Savem sees a stripper in the bar. He wants to make that woman into somebody who he wants to be. He wants not see that person for who they are. And this is what the white liberal does. He does not want the Negro to be his own person. He wants the Negro to be the person that fits his narrative. And he wants the Negro to be the way he wants him to be. That's the only way he considers him successful. And that's shows, again, his passive aggressiveness and his paternalistic view of the Negro. Because, again, the white liberal sees the Negro as less than. And in order for the Negro to be considered acceptable by his standard, Negro has to fit within his boxes, which is, because the white liberal loves to compartmentalize, just like your nice guy. And the only Negroes he's going to accept are the ones who fit his narrative for blackness. And that is your poor, miserable, downtrodden Negroes who like to drink their grape soda, like to play basketball, your nappy-headed Negro males who just sitting around drinking Colt 45, your unwed single mothers, your loudmouth black females. And those are the Negroes he likes because they fit the narratives that he want to tell about African Americans. They fit the story he wants to tell about African Americans. They make his world smooth because he feels that these Negroes will never, rise to his level. And as long as these Negroes remain at that level, he feels comfortable about maintaining the dysfunctional, codependent relationship that he has with them. And the whole thing is that's what makes the white liberal, a monster, because he's saying he wants to help the Negro, but he doesn't want to help the Negro. He wants the Negro to remain at the bottom while he makes promises that they will be, have the ability to come up and be part of his middle class, of a middle class. That's the promise he makes them. But he does things to, because he's passive aggressive and he's self-sabotaging like nice guys are. He does things to impede that growth. Like whenever somebody is about to finish college or they're about to graduate college, here comes the white liberal, if you're in one of his social programs, with strings. That's when he starts bringing in his strings, talking about, cutting people off cases, kicking them out of Section 8 housing. He does not want anybody to grow. He does not want anybody to change. He wants the Negro, again, to remain continuously dependent on him, because if the Negro remains dependent on him, he doesn't have to compete with him. He doesn't have to be challenged by him. Negro remains, in that state of arrested development, this white liberal doesn't have to grow, he doesn't have to change, and he doesn't want anybody to change because he wants everybody to remain continuously dependent on him. And he wants to create a dependent class of Negroes that remain at the bottom that he can continue to make money off of, with his social programs. Because a social program is basically, how he makes his money by saying that there are poor, impoverished Negroes that, need these programs. And because they need the programs, he can distribute the money to them and they'll be taken care of. Really, again, another slap in the face to the Negro. But because Negro has no critical thinking skills, he can't see the slaps in the face that this white liberal gives him every time. Because he's insulting you by saying you need his social programs to come up. Because he's basically saying you're too stupid to do things on your own. You're too stupid to go out and do for yourself. You are not capable of doing things the way you need to do, and you are too stupid to grow past a certain level. That's what the backhanded slap of the white liberal social programs are. He's basically insulting you and saying that without my help, you can't be a semblance of human. And when we look at the history of your Democratic Party, which founded all these policies, what were they saying about the African American Negro? The exact same thing. They were saying that the Negro was subhuman, the Negro was, not very intelligent, Negro was not capable of doing for self, Negro was incompetent, and that the Negro needed some white benefactor to care for them, just like the sharecroppers did in the Jim Crow period. Basically, the exact same thing. That's what the social programs are. If you look at the history, look at the parallels, and connect the dots, you will see that the white liberals of today and the Democrats from Jim Crow period think the exact same way about the Negro. They think he's less than, he's not capable, and that without his help and without their sponsorship, this Afro American Negro cannot do anything and will be nothing more than a nuisance to society. And because many Negroes buy into the narrative of the white liberal, it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. But the person who needs the Negro the most is the white liberal because the white liberal, again, like a nice guy, is insecure, he's uncomfortable, and, because he's insecure and uncomfortable with the idea of competing with the Negro, he tries to do things to keep the Negro dependent on him. And as long as the Negro is dependent on him, he's okay. As long as the Negro is in his place, he's okay. As long as he's in his compartment, playing his role as a thug, as a gangster, or a poor, miserable Negro who was a victim, the white liberal is okay. But when the Negro starts showing that he can be a black man or a black woman, that makes the white liberal uncomfortable because you're not following his script, you're not following his narrative. And like the nice guy can't deal with people who don't follow his script. He can't deal with people who don't follow his narrative. Just like the black people who founded towns and built businesses. Your racists could not deal with them because they weren't following the script that the Democrats created for the Negro and the liberals created for the Negro. You're not doing things the way I want you to do them, and that's why they form organizations like your Ku Klux Klan to terrorize black people. That's when you start seeing people start to reveal how racist they are because you're not following the script that they want to write regarding black people. You're not fitting their narrative, and you're not doing what they expect of you. Instead, you're doing what everybody else is doing, which is doing what you want to do because that's what America is supposed to be about. But nice guys again don't want black people to be who they want to be. They want black people to be what they want and what fits their narrative. They want to compartmentalize you into boxes where you fit stereotypes so that they can have a smooth world with no problems, no conflicts, and no challenges, and no competition whatsoever. That is basically what your white liberal is, and that's part of the pathology of his nice guy syndrome. Again, he does not see the Negro as equal to him. He does not want the Negro to be equal to him. He wants the Negro, again, to be under him and beneath him. And as long as he's fitting in his place, everything is fine. But he'll sit there and say that he's the Negro's friend. He cares about the Negro. He's got the Negro's best interest at heart. He's got the Negro's safety at heart. He's got the Negro's well-being at heart. And he doesn't have those things at heart. He only, like the nice guy, he's only giving to get for himself because he does not know how to meet his own needs. If we look at your post-Civil War Reconstruction, many of those Democrats and white liberals that came from that era, they didn't know how to do anything for themselves because they had no slaves to care for them, take care of things for them. They had no people under them anymore, so they had to learn how to. Instead of them learning how to do for self, a lot of those people started playing a blame and shame game, started hating on black people who had skills and education and were doing for themselves and had things. They got upset, and that's why they formed these terrorist organizations like your Ku Klux Klan and started creating Jim Crow policies because they wanted to get the Negro back under their control. And the same thing with your white liberals with their social programs in the 60s. They were afraid of having to compete with Negroes. They were afraid of a Negro patriarchal economic system. They were afraid of Negroes, being able to make trade and commerce with foreign entities, building businesses and infrastructure. So they went out here and gave, split people up, black men and black women up, and gave black women the consolation prize of these social programs and left them, stuck in this state of arrested development because they wanted, they thought, oh, this is a fast dollar. But that's what these policies do. This white liberal, again, like the nice guy, he's nice on the outside, but he's evil on the inside. He's got a nice smile on his face, and he says he's trying to help people, but what he's really trying to do is lock people into covert contracts where they remain codependent on him and they never grow because they never have an incentive to grow and change because they never have to go through the painful work of failure, loss, or doing for self. And that's what the white liberal doesn't want the Negro to do. He does not want the Negro to grow. Now, a lot of Negroes will look at the conservative and say, the conservative always telling me to do for myself or to do things for myself, or, why can't I? He's doing that because he understands that with pain comes growth, and with growth comes change. And, a hand out to you is only going to lead to you, coming back with your hat in hand, looking for another handout instead of you going out and making the hard efforts to go and do for self. Yes, there's support, and support helps people grow. Enabling allows people to remain in the exact same position they're in right now. And that's what happened to the Afro-American Negro community. That's why it's stalled for the last 40 years, because we've had nice guy liberals who have sat there and enabled these Negroes in these inner city communities and given them programs, that do not allow them to grow. Yes, you've given them college educations and all this stuff. You've given them food stamps, and that has not given anybody any incentive to push. The greatest tool you could give anybody is a job, but the liberal doesn't want to give people jobs because, again, he does not want to compete with African Americans in the job market. He does not want to compete with African American business. And what we're seeing right now, thanks to the white liberals' policies, is an America that is become pretty much mediocre. The country has stalled, and creatively and in all aspects, because he wants black people to remain as a permanent underclass instead of part of a middle class. And that again goes back to his passive aggressiveness. He promised black people that they would be part of a middle class, but then, because of his self-sabotaging, they've become part of a permanent underclass. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.